Here's a question. What does an abandoned merry-go-round and Dillon Danis have in common? They're both deserted, weirdly greasy, and can't swing. We haven't heard much from Dillon after he was launched back into the void of obscurity after his boxing match with Logan Paul last year. Turns out, when you don't have any charisma, aren't likable, can't really fight even though you're supposed to be a fighter, and spend all your free time indiscriminately harassing anybody with a following in hopes that you can leech off their success, people just kind of forget you exist.
And I didn't do it for the fame.
But the fact that virtually nobody has been paying him any mind has not stopped Dillon Danis from trying his best to gain some type of relevance again. Problem is, he's still Dillon Danis and he only has one mode of operation. Trying as hard as possible to be as annoying as possible to famous people in hopes that they throw him a crumb with a response. Or sadder yet, trying to unsolicitedly ass Conor McGregor like with this tweet here. Make no mistake, the notorious MMA is the greatest featherweight of all time and still the lineal champion, end of discussion. That's in reference to Ilia Topuria finishing Max Holloway for the first time in his career. And even if that's what you honestly believe, why say it? There was no discussion and nobody asked. This is Topuria's first title defense. Alexander Volkanovski was the champion before that and Max Holloway before that. Conor hasn't had the title or even been a featherweight in almost a decade. So where was this rhetoric for the past 9 years? Could it be that Dillon assumes that Conor might be a little bit insecure about Ilia potentially being better than him?
Little ding dong of a thing he is.
And this is an extremely transparent attempt to get him to notice him again? The biggest dick riders the sport has ever seen. Yeah, that pretty much says it. Conor could not care less about Dillon Danis these days. He doesn't reply to him, doesn't retweet him, doesn't take pictures with him. And as sunken of a place as he's currently in himself, the one thing he does do is move forward. He's constantly working on new projects, ventures, and trying to reinvent himself in some way. And Dillon is forever stuck in 2018 when he was McGregor's 25-year-old training partner and the future seemed bright. Never mind the fact that it's now 6 years later, he's in his early 30s, and the most substantial thing he's ever accomplished in fighting is being McGregor's jiu-jitsu coach for a month. But that doesn't stop him from deluding himself into legitimately believing that he is a big name in the world of mixed martial arts, and calling out ranked UFC fighters, thinking that if he insults them, they'll be anxiously flying off the leash to defend their honor in the cage against them. Dana White, feed me this one-eyed infant. Easy money. Besides the fact that Dana 100% didn't see this tweet and probably forgets that Dillon Danis exists unless somebody specifically reminds him, the fact that the fighter in question, Sharpudin Magomedov, can't even fight in the United States because he's legally blind in one eye yet still has a contract with the UFC, while Dillon can't even get signed for one fight even through nepotism while being friends with one of the most influential fighters in the organization, has to eat at his soul. He clearly believes that he's still riding the momentum of the build-up to the Logan Paul fight.
Everybody wants to see me in the UFC, I think. I'll fight Islam first fight. I'll fight any of them first fight.
So, hottest free agent in the game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
you or Francis at this point?
Francis sucks.
But what he doesn't seem to get is that his worth as a fighter was ruined so badly by Logan Paul that it's impossible for anyone to take him seriously. His insults hold about as much weight as any other random person on Twitter, and even Z-class influencer boxers like HS Tiki Taki brush him off.
I was meant to fight Dillon in Miami, which would have been good, but he's saying, oh, fight me in MMA. I'm like, bruv, I even said to Mams, I'll put it in a contract that I have to fight you within 12 months in MMA. But why am I going to go fight you right now in MMA, get choked out, and then it deads my boxing career off? That's what Mams said to me. I then said to Mams, because Dillon was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, no, Dillon was like, oh, let's just see how much drama we can cause on the net, and then I'll decide if I want to fight him. He had the weekend to decide. On Monday, he said to Mams he didn't want to do it. He wants MMA. I said to Mams, all right, pay me $1 million and I'll do MMA. F it, I'll just train for 6 weeks and I'll try bang him. $1 million's worth it. Like, f it. If I lose, I don't think I lose that much, like, aura, as you would say, in the boxing world, because he's a 5-time jiu-jitsu world nerd, whatever he is, yeah? Then Mams was like, no, because you can't lose, blah, blah, blah. So it's not happening, basically.
In the fallout of the Logan Paul fight, he honestly believed that UFC was eager to sign him, and he wouldn't just take any contract. It had to be something good, or he wouldn't agree.
What if they say, all right, we will take you, but it has to be...
No.
What? You don't even know what I'm going to say. What?
Contender series?
Yes.
Shit. No. I'd rather retire, bro.
Hey, no, Sean O'Malley went Contender Series.
I don't care. I'm not Sean O'Malley, bro. I'm bigger than him. I have the most followers and any welterweight in the whole in all MMA.
Really?
So yeah.
Self-awareness on 0.0. Just look at this dude's banner on Twitter. Scarface.
Say good night to the bad guy.
That's how he thinks people see him. So cool, dark, and unhinged. Not a dopey dork at all. Who would ever say that? The man heard all publicity is good publicity once and ran with it forever. How can you not realize that getting beat up by Logan Paul completely devalues you in the eyes of any serious MMA organization? Heavyweight versus welterweight. Why isn't anyone saying this about me and Logan? Because Logan Paul is a middleweight at best, because he's not a fighter, because you couldn't stop talking about how easily you would wreck him before the fight.
So I just smashed him. That's all it is. You know, it is what it is. Bring him to me right now. Let's see what he's gonna say to my face. The part about all this whole thing is like these little YouTube auctions. They're gonna see what a real fighter feels like.
Let's say Dillon did make it into the UFC and was able to actually win some fights. How would it look for the sport when everyone could just point to say the guy that got pieced up by Logan Paul is beating legitimate fighters? You think Dana White, who tried feeding Nate Diaz to Khamzat Chimaev once his contract expired because he knew he was going away to fight Jake Paul, would be okay with that? And that was Nate Diaz, an actual big name. What value does Dillon Danis bring to the table to counteract the embarrassment of having the guy that got smacked up by a YouTuber on your roster? Hate me all you want, that was a pure striker that just got embarrassed. I'm a grappler. I stood my ground, never took a step back, no standing count, never dropped. F all your opinions, I didn't even train, just walked in there. That's in reference to the Jake Paul and Mike Perry fight. Dillon doesn't seem to be capable of analyzing an outcome past the initial reaction. Just like he thought that humiliating Logan Paul's fiance would get him a UFC contract because his harassment went viral, oblivious to the fact that getting beat pillar to post in the actual fight made everything said in the build-up worthless, he also predictably thought that he could bank on the moral victory because he was a grappler.
And I went out there, I didn't get wobbled, I didn't get a standing 8 count.
And it was so predictable that the announcers actually called him out for it during the fight.
Guys, Dillon Danis lives on the internet. I think he really just doesn't want to get knocked out. And ultimately, I think he thinks it's a moral victory if he goes the distance with Logan.
And that's beside the fact that everything he tried to do in that fight was copied from somebody else that already did it much better. He ripped off Nate Diaz's taunts, Tyson Fury's entrance music, and Prince Nassim Hamed's shorts. For somebody that considers himself to be a marketing genius, everything he does is so unsophisticated and see-through. Like, take this tweet here. If Jake Paul can knock me out, every single person who likes this will get $50,000. I'll put it in my contract. A very obvious and desperate attempt to secure a Jake Paul payday who would never pay him any mind at this point. I mean, what's he gonna do? Box Dillon Danis instead of Mike Tyson on Netflix, thereby not only losing millions, but also the Netflix deal itself because it hinges on the value that Mike Tyson's name brings? What world does that even make sense in? 20 seconds of logically analyzing the situation for anyone, even somebody that doesn't know anything about combat sports, would clearly lead to the conclusion that not only won't Jake Paul respond, but the general public will also ignore it, or even more likely ridicule it, because again, nobody anywhere would be more intrigued by Jake Paul fighting Dillon Danis than Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson. So why even try besides making yourself look attention-starved and pathetic? Oh, and get destroyed by the community notes, with people saying that your total net worth is $2 million, so you would only be able to give $50K to 40 people. F the Nurmagomedovs. Khabib hasn't paid Dillon any mind ever since he jumped on him from the cage 6 years ago. That was a one-time heat-of-the-moment thing, and he's been happily retired for 4 years. Had he known that Dillon would turn that sliver of attention into a lifelong obsession, he would have just stayed his ass in the cage. And again, no bigger plan, no strategy, total disregard of the fact that he's not even in the organization or the weight class to fight any active Nurmagomedovs. Just another poorly thought out attempt to get attention from somebody that hasn't thought about him in over half a decade. I am the best mixed martial artist in the world, and I will prove it. I will fight anyone. Every UFC fighter is scared of me. This tweet is the equivalent to trying to charge $50,000 to a club promoter when you're an influencer with less than 1,000 followers. It's weird, it doesn't make sense, and it makes everyone involved feel awkward and embarrassed. You can't just say something absurd and ridiculous and have it come true as if by magic. I know that he picked up the law of attraction thing from Conor, but there has to be some kind of action behind the statements. Like, you can't just say you're a millionaire and then be it. Something else has to occur. Even if it's the easiest path in the world and you end up winning the lottery, you still have to buy the lottery ticket. Dillon just expects to be the best mixed martial artist by virtue of not fighting and losing fights to YouTubers. Oh, and by photoshopping himself into images of relevant fighters like Sean Strickland, who swat him away like a gnat in the comments. Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Danis, just a prolific thinker. Logan wants to ruin my life with this lawsuit. I've been battling every single day for 8 months. Right back at you. This war will never be over. I'm not a Logan Paul fan. I don't despise him like everyone seems to. I recognize that he's not the best person, but he falls into the same category as Brendan Schaub for me. People that are over-hated, to the point where everything they do is twisted into some nefarious thing that's punishable by eternal damnation. It's like, okay, we get it. They're not the best people, but they're not spending their weekends strangling pandas for fun, you know? With that said, and this is a hill I'm willing to die on, what Dillon did to Logan Paul's fiance, Nina Agdal, was straight up disgusting. She never did anything to him or ever said anything about him, and he proceeded to drag her name through the mud for months just because she was associated with Logan Paul, completely ruining her reputation by posting Photoshop pictures and essentially implying that she was an escort to an audience of millions of people.
Where's Nina at, you little bitch?
Dillon,
Bring that whore up here.
And the fact that so many people, even those with a huge following themselves, acted like it was no big deal is a testament to the fact of how much we're willing to overlook when it hurts somebody that we don't like, or how much we'll tiptoe around the subject when we know there will be backlash. And Dillon excuses it by saying that he was only doing the same thing to Logan that Jake Paul previously did to him.
Dillon, I know you're watching this, and just remember you're still a bitch. I hooked up with your girlfriend.
But saying that somebody's girlfriend was in your DMs once is not the same thing as going on a viral harassment tour meant to humiliate, defame, and permanently damage somebody's reputation. Hot take, I guess, but Nina had every right to sue him, and if this was really a nothing case, he wouldn't be that pressed about it. The reason why it's ruining his life is because the evidence is substantial, and Dillon has nobody but himself to blame for it. And this is yet another instance where he showed zero foresight. He's seemingly not capable of predicting anything past the initial action. He's the guy that's baffled by getting paint on his hands after touching a wall with a fresh paint sign. And if you're wondering if somebody is distraught by the lawsuit as he seems to be, learned his lesson, come on. Lessons are for people that are trying to become better, and you can't be better than perfect. It's Dillon Danis, baby. Here's a very likely Photoshop DM from Paige Van Zandt that he posted back in June, supposedly asking him to be on her OF while her husband watches. And the first response is a kill shot. Not funny, not amused, not a laugh, not a chuckle, not a haha, or even a hee hee. That was not funny at all. I didn't even move any of my facial muscles. I wish I could go back to 10 seconds ago when I didn't hear that. It was not funny. And I feel like that accurately describes every attempt that Dillon has made to get attention. The guy is a one-trick pony with the lamest trick imaginable. But from time to time, he shows what this behavior is really stemming from, and I start to feel bad. Like this post where he's talking about his old coach, Marcelo Garcia, who he once viewed as a father, banning him from his gym for saying that he liked Nate Diaz as a teen, and eventually cutting ties with him for similar reasons, and then hypocritically years later inviting Diaz for a seminar. He's been rejected pretty much his whole adult life, and maybe his antisocial behavior is a way to preemptively give people a reason to dislike him, because that's easier to take than having people hate him when he's just being himself. And maybe that's why he also tries to be an advocate for mental health, which seems like a transparent attempt to get people to like him at best, or something to combat his cognitive dissonance at worst, considering so much of what he does could be interpreted as bullying. Just something to ponder, but let me know what you think about my take in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button and notification bell next to it. And if you want to support the channel further and get perks like early access to videos and highlighted comments, become a member by hitting the join button if you're on Android or desktop, or the link in the description if you're on iOS.
And his best attribute really is just staying relevant by say crazy shit on the internet. But in my opinion, it's gonna end run. You don't do that. People die for acting like that. Like facts.
Yeah.
You don't go that far, because
you talking about the stuff about this girl.
All of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that. That's just too much. If you do that to me, I will never sue you, but do it. If I see you, it's gonna be bad. I'm willing to go to live in jail, because you don't. Talking like that should be illegal too. I mean, you're making illegal some worlds, and you're making all this bullshit with politics. That should be illegal.
Disrespecting someone's wife.
Like
or
going
wife
that deep.
Yeah,
Going
yeah.
that deep in any sense. You don't make fun of people with disabilities. You don't talk about people's families. It's just things. There's just codes in there that men should have.